Staying with this story, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has declared the incumbent Emmerson Mnangagwa as the winner of this week's presidential elections. The outcome has been rejected by the opposition and questioned by observers. The elections were marred by delays and fueled opposition accusations of rigging and voter suppression. For more on this, I'm joined by human rights activist Rashweat Mukundu. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Mukundu. We do appreciate it. So I think many were really looking very closely at what was going to come out of these elections and the results. But once again, Emmerson Mnangagwa has been elected as Zimbabwe's president for a second term. Do you believe that this is a true reflection of what was taking place at all these voting stations?
Well, this is not a reflection of the will of the people of Zimbabwe. This is based on the mismanagement of the electoral process. We saw thousands and hundreds of Zimbabweans failing to vote because there was purportedly a shortage of voting materials. We saw as many communities in rural areas being frog marched to the polling stations, having their names recorded, being threatened with violence should they not vote for the ruling party. We have also seen the gerrymandering of figures by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. The figures that were announced by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission have not been assented to by the opposition. They have not been verified by any other independent body. The figures, we believe, are being pulled from the air to support and legitimize a ZANU-PF win. But there is every evidence based on the tabulation of the voting patterns, figures that were coming from the provinces, that were coming from various polling stations, that there is a huge variance between what was announced by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and the true reflection of how the people of Zimbabwe voted on 23 August and then 24 August.
So what happens now moving forward? Do you suspect that there could be any court action? And I ask this because there is a desperation, especially from citizens in Zimbabwe who want change, who want a better life, who want a better economy and want to stay in Zimbabwe, but they cannot because of what's currently at play. Do you think that, what do you think is going to happen moving forward, rather?
No doubt that the opposition would attempt to challenge this in court, but based on experiences from our 2018 election, which followed a similar pattern of the fixing of figures by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, there's no confidence among the people of Zimbabwe on the fairness, on the transparency of the judiciary, which again has been captured. Let me hasten to say that a few days before Zimbabweans voted, senior judges received houses worth thousands and thousands of US dollars. They received new vehicles, and there is every indication that the ruling party, ZANU-PF, has captured the judiciary. So whilst the opposition may attempt to challenge this in the courts, there is every reason to believe that they will not get a fair hearing. But the tragedy is not so much what the opposition will get in the courts, but it's the perennial political crisis that Zimbabwe has been plunged in, a perennial crisis of economic challenges, of political divisions, of violence and human rights abuses, and a huge migration of the people of Zimbabwe to the neighboring South Africa, to other parts of the world, because they cannot survive, they cannot feed their families as a result of the poor governance, as a result of the bad governance that ZANU-PF has presided over in Zimbabwe.
And I think that's the tragedy in all of this. And maybe if we could just end off in terms of what the people of Zimbabwe are really feeling like this evening. There have been indications that these elections once again have been rigged. You've indicated that many people were frog marched to vote specifically for Emmerson Mnangagwa. at the end of the day, they are the ones that are suffering. They are the ones that are now trying to leave Zimbabwe for a better life wherever it might be. And it just doesn't seem as though the realities of the people are going to get better, despite the fact that there was an election that took place this week. This was an opportunity for people to vote for a better life. But this doesn't seem to be happening. It doesn't seem to ever be happening in Zimbabwe for a very long time, which is the tragedy, isn't it?
It is, and there is a lot of resignation. If one could have driven in the Harare city center, small shops, vendors who are normally busy over the weekend stayed at home. There is a sadness, there is concern about the future, as many people are worried about what tomorrow brings under a ZANU-PF government. Let me also add that ZANU-PF never came up with a manifesto for this election. They did not promise anything. So there is no document, there is no vision that they set out for them to be accountable to the people of Zimbabwe. So essentially, if they underperform, if the corruption continues, if the violence continues, there is no accountability. There's nothing to hold them to account because they promised nothing. So the tragedy for Zimbabwe, which will reverberate, which will be felt across the region, is that we will actually see more Zimbabweans having to leave this country. Half the population of Zimbabwe is starving. They need food aid. There are no jobs. As many people have no access to health, and there has been no indication or seriousness on the part of the ZANU-PF government to address these issues. So what we are seeing is a deepening of the political crisis in Zimbabwe. What we are seeing is a new chapter in the suffering, in the political crisis, in the social and economic crisis that Zimbabwe has been going on and has been facing for the past 20 years or so.
It's a real tragedy, but thank you so much for your insights this evening. We do appreciate it. That was human rights activist Rashweat Mukundu just speaking to us about the results that came out of Zimbabwe, with Emmerson Mnangagwa being re-elected as the president for a second term. Now,